It was supposed to be the perfect birthday party. Luxury, prestige, a guest list filled with high society names. But in the middle of all that glamour, no one paid attention to the little girl the party was actually for. No one, except the maid. While everyone else posed for pictures and sipped champagne, a black cleaning woman sat on the floor and simply played with the birthday girl. What happened next? No one saw it coming. Because when the child stood up in front of everyone and said, "She's not just the maid, she's my real mom," everything changed. Not just the party, but the entire family. Laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses echoed across the Hammond estate gardens, where every detail seemed meticulously designed to impress or intimidate. Pastel pink balloons floated lazily in the afternoon breeze, while sharply dressed waiters glided through the crowd with trays of petit fours and artisanal lemonades. Mothers in heels posed across the lawn, their smiles rehearsed, their eyes scanning for whoever might be watching. The entire event was a parade of appearances. At the center of the celebration, yet completely forgotten, was Olivia, the little girl whose name was written in gold letters across the towering three-tier cake. Dressed like a catalog princess, she sat alone on the lowest step of the terrace, clutching a doll that clearly didn't match the aesthetic chosen by her stepmother for the party. Her eyes scanned the garden, searching for something, or someone, but no one looked back. Her father, Richard, was deep in an animated conversation with two investors about a new real estate project in Texas. Her stepmother, Candace, stood at the center of a social circle, holding a champagne flute while gushing about how she organized the entire party herself. Everything revolved around them, their image, their performance, while the real star of the day remained invisible. Olivia tried to join a group of kids near the dessert table, but they barely acknowledged her. One girl pulled another away as soon as she approached. With slumped shoulders and teary eyes, Olivia retreated to a quiet corner where no one could see her cry. That's when someone unexpected noticed her. Someone no one else in that party wanted to acknowledge. A black woman, dressed in a gray uniform and worn-out shoes, walked quietly with a tray of used plates and empty glasses. Her name was Ruth Ellison. No one knew that, except Olivia. Ruth wasn't one to speak much, but she watched everything with careful eyes. She saw Olivia sitting alone, saw her grip her doll tighter, saw her try and fail to fit in. And then, going against everything expected of someone in her position, Ruth quietly set the tray aside and walked toward the little girl. She sat beside her, right there on the ground. No permission asked, no apology given, no shame. "Want to play with me?" she asked gently, pulling a small beaded bracelet out of her pocket. For the first time that day, Olivia's eyes lit up. Ruth sat next to Olivia without hesitation, as if the cold stone tiles beneath them were more welcoming than any chair at the event. Olivia watched her hands closely as she threaded the beads together. Simple, colorful, magical in their own quiet way. "This one's just for you, okay?" Ruth said, without looking up, as if they were sharing a secret. Olivia nodded silently, fully entranced. The gesture was small, ordinary, but it was the first real thing anyone had done for her all day. Meanwhile, the whispers had already begun. Candace, sipping her champagne nearby, noticed her stepdaughter sitting on the ground with the cleaning lady and stiffened. Not out of concern, but embarrassment. Two women whispered behind their sunglasses, never looking directly at the scene they were judging. Is she really hanging out with the maid? That woman has no sense of boundaries. Ruth heard. She always heard. But she didn't move. They finished the bracelet, and Ruth slipped it gently onto Olivia's wrist. The girl smiled, really smiled, breaking the coldness of the whole event in one effortless gesture. Candace couldn't take it anymore. She turned away with a tight jaw, throwing back a gulp of champagne. The sight of Ruth, a black woman in a janitor's uniform, sitting next to her pristine stepdaughter, was not just off-brand. It was, in Candace's mind, humiliating. But Ruth knew what she was doing. She didn't need to prove anything. Her presence said it all. And in that moment, whether anyone else acknowledged it or not, she was the only person who truly existed for Olivia. The bracelet now shimmered on Olivia's wrist like a silent trophy, made from cheap beads but carrying the weight of something rare, genuine affection. Ruth had quietly returned to work, collecting empty cups, wiping down tables, pretending not to notice the stares. Olivia remained sitting for a while, gently turning her wrist to watch the beads catch the light. It was like holding a little secret happiness in plain sight. But the feeling didn't last. Trying once again to join the other kids near the sweets table, Olivia smiled and showed her new bracelet. One girl wrinkled her nose. "Ew, what is that? It looks dirty." "I bet the cleaning lady gave it to her." Another giggled. "It probably came from the trash." Olivia shrank instantly, hiding her wrist behind her back. Her chest tightened. Across the garden, Candace watched with barely concealed satisfaction. She didn't intervene. She didn't need to. In her mind, things were falling back into place. To her, Ruth had crossed an unspoken boundary, and children who crossed boundaries needed correction. Olivia being shamed back into line by the other kids? That was convenient. And love? Candace had no patience for what love required. Time. Effort. Vulnerability. No. Her version of motherhood was perfectly posed, filtered, and posted. Richard was still deep in business talk, barely glancing at his daughter. At one point, he nodded in her direction from afar, but Olivia didn't see. And even if she had, what was there to nod back to? She walked to the side of the house, away from the party noise, and sat again, this time hugging her knees. The bracelet, once a source of joy, now felt like a mark. She didn't want to take it off, but she didn't want to be laughed at either. From behind a hedge, Ruth saw her. She didn't move this time. She understood the silence. Some wounds needed space. She had felt it before, too. In that grand house full of guests, gourmet pastries, and fake smiles, the strongest scent wasn't the flowers or the food. It was the overwhelming stench of indifference. And no one felt it more than Ruth and Olivia. The party music still played, but Olivia heard none of it. Everything felt muffled, like being underwater. The kids' laughter seemed far away. So did the rest of the world. Candace posed for photos by the floral wall. A drone buzzed above, filming the perfect day. It was all continuing, louder, glossier, emptier. Ruth stood nearby, not cleaning, not moving, just watching. And then, she couldn't hold back anymore. She pulled off her gloves, tucked them in her pocket, and walked toward Olivia with quiet purpose. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't hesitate. She simply sat next to the girl once more. Same as before. "You know what helps when you're sad?" Ruth asked softly. Olivia didn't respond. Ruth opened her hand and revealed a tiny pouch filled with alphabet beads. "How about we make another bracelet? One with your name on it." Olivia paused, then nodded slowly. Right there on the stone path, the two of them began picking letters and colors. Bead by bead, they spelled it out together. Olivia. It was a simple moment. Yet in that setting, it felt almost rebellious. On the other side of the yard, a mother elbowed her friend. "She's making crafts with the maid? This is getting out of hand." Candace overheard and tightened her grip on her glass. That image, Olivia laughing with Ruth, both sitting on the floor, focused only on each other, felt like a crack in the pristine facade Candace had built. A threat to her social narrative. But Ruth didn't care. She tied the bracelet on Olivia's wrist beside the first one. Olivia looked at them both, then at Ruth, and gave a wider smile than anyone had seen all day. It wasn't a thank you. It was a declaration. Even if no one else saw her, Ruth had. And that was everything. The second bracelet gleamed proudly on Olivia's wrist, now sitting beside the first like a quiet act of defiance. Made of cheap beads, yes, but worn like something priceless. She stretched her arm out now and then, watching them shine, as if holding on to a piece of truth in the middle of a world built on performance. Ruth remained nearby, quietly back at work, wiping down surfaces, collecting dishes, pretending not to hear the whispers starting to ripple through the crowd. "She's still with the maid? Is no one going to stop this? Where's the stepmother?" Candace caught the tone instantly. The eyes. The judgment. From her place near the champagne tower, she took a deep breath, smiled too wide, and began walking toward them, her heels biting into the grass with every step. Her composure was tight, rehearsed, until she reached them. Ruth sat on the ground beside Olivia again, calmly tying off a final knot on the bracelet. Candace crouched slightly, her voice sugar-coated but icy underneath. "Ruth, may I have a word?" Ruth looked up slowly. Olivia grabbed her hand before she could stand. "She's with me," Olivia said, eyes locked on Candace's. Candace's smile didn't falter, but her voice dropped lower. "Of course, sweetie. But Ruth needs to get back to work, remember?" Olivia didn't reply. She just squeezed Ruth's hand tighter. Ruth gently released her grip. "It's okay, Liv. I'll be right back." They walked to the side of the house, out of sight from most of the guests. As soon as they were alone, Candace dropped the act. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she hissed. "This is a family event, not your moment to play mother." Ruth didn't flinch. She was alone. "I gave her some attention, that's all." "You confused her," Candace snapped. "You've crossed a line." Ruth's voice stayed low, steady. "She's confused because no one's paying attention. I didn't cause that. I just didn't ignore it like the rest of you." Candace looked around to make sure no one could hear. Her face darkened. "If you ruin this party for me, I swear to God." But Ruth was already turning away, done with the games. She didn't need to yell. She didn't need to defend herself. She just walked back toward the girl who, in a garden full of cameras and cold smiles, had chosen her. And when Ruth returned, Olivia ran to her without hesitation and hugged her around the waist. No one stopped them, because everyone saw, and no one could unsee it now. The party hadn't stopped, but something had shifted. After the confrontation, the whispers didn't die down. If anything, they grew sharper. Ruth's presence was no longer just strange. It was threatening the performance. The girl, the bracelets, the warmth, it didn't match the script. And people noticed. Richard finally looked up from his conversation near the bar. His gaze followed the tension in the crowd until it landed on his daughter, once again seated beside the cleaning lady. This time, laughing, relaxed. "Why is she still with the maid?" he muttered to Candace. Candace, sipping her third glass of champagne, didn't even turn her head. "Because you haven't paid attention to your daughter for 7 years. Richard blinked, taken aback by the coldness. Before he could say more, a photographer from the event staff approached Olivia with a cheerful voice. "Hey, birthday girl, smile for the camera." Olivia looked up, then glanced at Ruth. She stood, walked over, and grabbed her hand. "Take a picture of me with my mom," she beamed. The photographer tilted his head. "Your mom? Which one's your mom, sweetheart?" Olivia pointed proudly at Ruth. "Her. That's my real mom." Everything stopped. Laughter, conversation, even the music seemed to quiet. A child's voice had cracked the illusion. Candace nearly dropped her glass. Her eyes flared with rage. "Olivia, that is not appropriate. Stop this now." But Olivia didn't back down. "No, she loves me. You just like taking pictures." Ruth stood frozen. Her heart beat loud in her chest. She had not planned this, had never dared to imagine it. But now it was out, raw, undeniable. Richard stepped forward, pale. "Olivia, what are you saying?" But he already knew, and so did everyone watching. Candace turned red. "This is nonsense. She's not your mother. She's the maid." But Richard didn't say a word. Ruth finally did. "You should have told her, Richard." The world tilted again. Candace's eyes darted between them. "Told her what?" Ruth faced him, steady. "That I raised her after her mother died. That I fed her, held her, rocked her to sleep every night. That she said mama to me first, until you married Candace, and pushed me out." Richard remained silent. His guilt was a weight he could no longer hide. Candace scoffed. "So what? That doesn't make you her mother." But no one was listening to her anymore. Olivia stepped forward and looked up at Ruth. "I always knew," she whispered. "I remembered your smell, the way you hugged me." Ruth finally let the tears come. And in the middle of a garden full of expensive silence, the truth finally shouted louder than all the lies. The garden was frozen in time. Guests stood like statues. No one moved. No one spoke. Ruth's truth had shattered the polished surface of the celebration like a stone through glass. Her voice hadn't been loud, but it had cut through everything. Candace's heels clicked sharply as she approached, eyes wild. "This is ridiculous," she barked. She's a maid. She's not a mother. She's not even family. Ruth didn't flinch. The words stung, but she'd heard worse. What was different now was that she wasn't alone. Richard raised a hand as if to stop the chaos. That's enough, Candace. She whirled toward him, stunned. You're siding with her? But Richard wasn't looking at Candace anymore. His eyes were locked on Ruth, and on the child still holding her hand. Ruth took a slow breath. You should have told Olivia the truth, Richard. Candace laughed nervously. Truth? What truth? Ruth didn't break eye contact. When his first wife died, he didn't know what to do with a newborn. I was hired to help. I became her world. I was the one who rocked her through colic, sat up with her when she had fevers, kissed every scraped knee. She called me Mama before she could say her own name. Candace turned to Richard, her face pale. That's not true. But Richard didn't deny it. He looked down at the ground. She's right, he murmured. I didn't think it would matter. Ruth's voice was steady now, stronger. When you got married, I was sent to the laundry room. I stopped feeding her, stopped bathing her. But I stayed. Because even if I couldn't be near her, I needed to be close enough to see her grow. Gasps rippled through the guests. Some began filming with their phones. Others simply stared, stunned. Candace's voice cracked. She's trying to manipulate everyone. You really believe her? But Olivia turned to her. You never hugged me, she said plainly. She did. Silence again. Ruth knelt to Olivia's level. I didn't want you to find out this way. I'm glad I did, Olivia replied. Ruth smiled through her tears, brushing the girl's hair gently behind her ear. And in that moment, the truth stopped being a secret. It became something else entirely. Undeniable. Candace stood alone now, surrounded by guests who once whispered praise, now whispering something else. Judgment. Pity. Disgust. She took a step forward, her voice shrill. She's not her mother. She's a staff member with boundary issues. This is emotional blackmail. Ruth didn't even look at her, but Olivia did. You never hugged me, she repeated. Not even once. You just take pictures. The words landed like bricks. Around them, no one moved. No one defended Candace. No one agreed with her anymore. Richard ran a hand down his face, exhausted. Candace, enough. She turned to him, desperate. You can't seriously be letting this happen. But he was done pretending. I let it happen for years. I ignored the signs. And now I finally see them. Candace's composure cracked. You're throwing me away for her? Richard's voice was firm. I'm removing someone who was never really here, and asking forgiveness from the one who always was. The guests began stepping back, sensing something irreversible had just taken place. Ruth remained calm, unmoved. Candace took a shaky breath and turned toward Olivia. You're just a confused little girl. But Olivia stepped forward and slowly removed the bracelet with her name on it. The one they had made together. She held it out. Here, you can throw this away too. Candace didn't take it. She just stared at everything slipping through her fingers, and saw it clearly for the first time. She had already lost. And not to Ruth, to the truth, to love, to a child who, with all her innocence, had finally chosen the person who never stopped choosing her. Olivia turned back to Ruth and hugged her. Long, tight, without fear. And Candace stood there, wordless and exposed. The role she had been performing for years, stepmother, hostess, perfect wife, was over, and everyone knew it. Richard stood frozen, the weight of years pressing against his chest. The garden, once filled with carefully staged elegance, now felt hollow, just a backdrop for the mess he had let grow in silence. Olivia sat quietly beside Ruth, still holding her hand, and Richard, for the first time, truly looked at them. Not just saw, but understood. He turned toward Candace. We're ending this, he said. Her face twisted in disbelief. Ending what? This marriage, this performance, all of it. Gasps fluttered through the crowd again. Candace's jaw dropped. You're divorcing me? Over a maid? Richard didn't raise his voice. No, I'm divorcing you because of how you treat my daughter, because of how you treat people, and because I finally see what I should have seen years ago. Candace's voice cracked with rage. She manipulated this entire situation. "You're blind." But no one was listening anymore. Not even Richard. He turned to Ruth. "I don't expect forgiveness. I know what I allowed. I looked away because it was easier. And I'm sorry." Ruth didn't respond immediately. She just looked down at Olivia, whose gaze was calm and clear. Then Ruth spoke, not to Richard, but to the child. "Do you want me to stay?" Olivia nodded immediately. "More than anything." Richard's eyes filled with tears. "I want you here. Not as staff, as family." There was no applause, no cheers, just quiet, heavy, real, the kind of silence that follows truth. The mansion felt different. It wasn't about the decorations anymore. The expensive silence had been replaced with something softer, something real. The guests were long gone. The floral arch had been taken down. Candace had packed her things and vanished into the past, leaving nothing behind but a bitter echo. Weeks passed. Ruth no longer walked the halls with her head down. She wore the same simple clothes, but the difference was in her posture, her pace, the way others looked at her, and the way Olivia looked at her most of all. On a quiet Sunday morning, the two sat together in the kitchen, making pancakes. Flour on their hands, chocolate chips everywhere, giggles bouncing off the walls. When breakfast was ready, Olivia pulled out a chair and patted the seat beside her. "Sit here. You're eating with me today." Ruth raised an eyebrow playfully. "Oh, am I?" "Yep. It's the rule now." They ate in peaceful silence for a few minutes. Then Olivia reached across the table, placing her small hand over Ruth's. "Now everyone knows," she said. "But I always knew." Ruth didn't speak right away. Her eyes welled, but she held it. "I always knew too." They sat there, fingers intertwined, finishing their pancakes and sharing a quiet morning that required no audience, no approval, just the truth between them. No stage, no mask, just love. And in that warm, unfiltered silence, the best party of all finally began. If you believe in stories that inspire, must challenge and give voice to those who are often unheard, hit that subscribe button below. More powerful journeys are coming, and we'd love to have you with us.